Joining us now is Representative Noah Arbit, a Democrat representing Michigan's 20th district, which includes the greater West Bloomfield area, as well as the Lakes area and Commerce here in southeastern Michigan. Noah, thank you for being with us today as we continue to react and to mourn the events at Michigan State on Monday. I want to just give you a moment here to say whatever you'd like to say to our local community as we continue to mourn right here in the greater West Bloomfield area, in your district, and in Oakland County.
Yeah, I mean, it's our hearts obviously are with everyone at Michigan State University, everyone in East Lansing, everyone on campus, and everyone across the state and in our communities who love us part, right? That's really what this is about, is making sure that we are supporting our community, supporting those who are impacted, and we know it's not just the people who are on campus that day, but everyone in the wider community. And so we are with them, and we want to get them the support that they need.
And so going back to yesterday, it's obviously the day immediately following, just really hours following the conclusion of the events on Monday night. You traveled back to Lansing to do your work at your congressional office, and I would imagine immediately that is the topic of conversation: gun violence, what happened at Michigan State University, and the people are calling for action. They want these to stop. It's been less than 15 months at this point in time since the shooting at Oxford High School, where 4 students were killed, 7 others were injured, and a teacher as well. And now in this case, so far, the death toll is 3, 5 are injured and in critical condition at Sparrow Hospital in Lansing. So what was the discussion on Tuesday immediately following that in terms of action that can be taken at the congressional level statewide?
Yes, well, clearly, this was something that was really hit close to home for those of us in the legislature, because it took place right next door to Lansing, in East Lansing. And so we didn't have legislative session in the House or the Senate on Tuesday, and our committees were also canceled. But we did go to work. We came back to work to talk through, how we were going to respond and what needed to be on the agenda to make sure that we never, ever see something like this ever happen again in the state of Michigan, because we know that these, as you mentioned, that these incidents have been, increasing in frequency for the past 10 to 20 years, and no action, very little action to no action has been taken, and that's unconscionable. Enough is enough. And so what we met yesterday to talk about was our raft of legislative responses. And so what we know is that, House Democrats are going to pursue a number of items. First, universal background checks to make sure that everyone who purchases a gun in the state of Michigan has to clear a background check through law enforcement. Safe storage laws to make sure that everyone in the state of Michigan who is licensed to carry a gun and has a weapon in their home has to secure it and store it safely, securely, in their homes, to make sure that no one who is unauthorized to access and utilize that weapon can do so without the owner's without the owner's knowledge. And the third one is red flag laws to make sure that, and in this instance, some of the reporting that we've seen come out has indicated that this would have been something that was helpful to make sure that people who are in a stage of crisis or at extreme risk, we can family members or other people in that individual's life can seek a court order to basically rescind that individual's firearms for a temporary period until such time as a judge deems that they are capable of safely and responsibly having a firearm in their possession. So those are the 3 things that we're working on. A number of other items that I'm pushing for, and a number of others are pushing for to be on the agenda. Severe regulations on assault weapons, including potentially a ban on sale and importation of assault weapons in the state of Michigan, commonly referred to as an assault weapons ban. That's something that we know, and we know that each of these policy responses that we could put into place, none of them alone, we can say, would guarantee that, MSU wouldn't have happened or Oxford wouldn't have happened. But that's not the right test. Frankly, I believe in a duty to try. And what we need to be doing is narrowing the windows of opportunity to ensure that incidents of gun violence are not happening with the frequency that they are happening now. We know that this, we can't eradicate gun violence writ large, but what we can do is ameliorate the problem, and that's what we're seeking to do with these responses. And coupled together, these responses, we believe, will create a new system in Michigan where we are, more resilient and against the threat of gun violence across our communities. Whether you're talking about suburban communities, whether it's a college campus, school, or urban communities which face the day in day out assault of gun violence, at a lower level than these, giant mass shooting events. But we need to address that as well.
Your Republican
so that's what we're looking.
Please, your Republican counterparts tend to, in these sort of situations, will argue this isn't a gun issue, this is a mental health issue, and I would think most reasonable people would take a step back from both the words of the Republicans in that sense and your party on the Democratic side and say, well, it's both. So with you being currently standing, you're the majority vice chair of the Health and Policy Subcommittee on Behavioral Health. What sort of steps can also be taken on the mental health side, which is also a major factor in some of these gun violence events too?
Yeah, and I think that the way we talk about it, I don't quite see this as a partisan issue. I mean, I don't think it should be a partisan issue because we all have an interest in building safe and resilient communities across the state of Michigan. And whether that's, gun violence or hate crimes or whatever it is, we need to all be working together to solve it. And so when it comes to this issue of gun violence, obviously, taking care of mental health is a big issue. And you mentioned, yes, I'm vice chair of the Behavioral Health Committee in the House, which I'm very proud to be because that's such an important issue for us to be working on. And, we need massive investments, but the other thing is that, this isn't, like you said, this isn't any one thing. Frankly, what we know about violence and why violence occurs is that violence is often the result of alienation. I worked at the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office, and what I learned while there is that, people don't generally just wake up and commit crimes. Poverty, unemployment, mental health, trauma, abuse, all of these things that are conditioned that, that pave the way, conditions that pave the way to violence occurring, we have to interrupt. And so when we're talking about harm reduction, in communities, when we're talking about, different programming, when we're talking about, making sure that everyone has a good paying job, all of that is prophylactically working to ensure that we are, reducing gun violence and violence writ large, because really the cure to violence is human connection, is embedding people within their communities, giving them purpose, helping them find their own purpose, helping them create the circumstances and the conditions for their own success. That is the best medicine we have to violence in our communities. And so all of the policy agendas that we have, policy goals that we have alighted on as House Democrats, with the partnership with the governor, from the beginning of this term and going forward, we believe are going to help address this issue of gun violence. So yes, it is going to be on the supply side in terms of an access to firearms. It is going to be in terms of investing resources into mental health and making sure that mental health for kids, seniors, and everyone in between can access mental health resources in our communities. It's going to be harm reduction. It's going to be so many other elements of this, to make sure that we are holistically looking at this problem and not just reacting to, one incident and saying, okay, well, this is what we have to do. No, it's a holistic, broader based, work that we have to do, and we're going to do it.
We're joined by Noah Arbit on today's edition of the Megacast, state representative from Michigan's 20th Congressional District, a Democrat, with us on today's program. You can learn more information, keep up to date with Representative Arbit on his website, housedems.com/Noah-Arbit for more information. And Noah, you have a unique perspective on this, coming in as a freshman representative in our Congress, state Congress, as someone who is a younger person in his late 20s that has gone through the lockdown drills and really was on the front end of that when those started to really become common in our schools and now are commonplace across all of our schools at all various levels, and is something that's become pretty routine, unfortunately, in kids' lives. And given that sort of perspective, as well as a perspective as someone that's not been a career politician dealing with all the politics of this debate over the years and the decades that we've been snipping at each other from across the political spectrum about this issue, how does that affect how does that perspective help you address this issue and other freshman congressmen as well in the state of Michigan, especially those younger individuals that are coming in that have a different way of looking at this thing because they've experienced it in some way or another.
Yeah, well, I think it makes me impatient and intolerant of those who seek to be timid. You know, for me, my faith growing up in the Jewish community in West Bloomfield, we learn about this a principle called pikuach nefesh, which means it's basically this idea that if you have saved one life, it is as if you have saved the entire world. And so, coming in as a freshman state representative representing West Bloomfield and taking on this issue of gun violence, that's how I lead. I don't think, I believe in a duty to try again. And whatever we can do, I will exhaust every path, chase down every lead, move heaven and earth to make sure that if we can do one small thing to save one life, that we are doing it. Because I couldn't think of anything more important to do. And I understand that there are politics involved and there are tough votes for people, but if we aren't working on saving lives, saving the lives of these three precious young lives that were just cut short for no rhyme or reason yesterday or on Tuesday. I mean, how can we look ourselves in the mirror if we don't act? I don't understand how people can look at themselves in the mirror and say that, they are having fidelity with their oath of office if they just decide to look the other way and not act on this issue. So for me, I look at the lives that are, and it's not just the lives of those three young individuals, but the lives of every single person who was on campus that day, every single person in the state who loves a Spartan, all of those lives, the trauma, the collective trauma of this event. And the day in and day out gun violence that we see in other communities across the state, we can't afford not to act. And so I think me being a young person who, as you said, and as you know well, has gone through those lockdown drills and was sort of at the beginning of this, sort of era of mass shootings and school shootings, it makes me intolerant of those people who would rather sit on their hands and avoid tough votes and politically tough votes, because I think that the more politically tough vote is choosing not to protect lives.
We're joined by Noah Arbit, representative of Michigan's 20th district in our state Congress or state legislature. Noah, another couple minutes with you before we'll need to wrap things up today. Anything else you'd like to say to your constituents at this time who may be affected by what happened Monday evening at Michigan State or on any other part of this issue that we've discussed here today?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to express my solidarity and empathy just for everyone who is feeling affected, and know that it's okay to not feel okay because of what happened. And I'm sorry that this happened, and I'm sorry that action wasn't taken soon enough. Action that potentially could have prevented or lessened the impact of some of these violent events, and particularly violent incidents of gun violence that we've seen, in Michigan and across the country. But to everyone, and I have received so many different, communications messages, text calls from constituents across West Bloomfield, Commerce, and the Lakes, telling me that we need to take action. I want you to know that I'm with you. I'll move heaven and earth to make sure that we are passing meaningful, comprehensive gun legislation and marrying it with the other tools that we have in our toolbox, whether it's investment in mental health or harm reduction, or making sure that our criminal justice system is really fit for purpose. All of that work is work that I'll be doing, in the legislature on your behalf and on behalf of all of our communities across the state. So I'm honored to be here to represent you, and I promise that we will act. The Michigan Legislature will act.
Well, Noah, we appreciate you joining us on today's program and giving us some more insight from what happened yesterday in the immediate wake of the violence at Michigan State University and how that affected our congressman here in the state of Michigan, and the discussions at the state capitol that are certainly going to play an important role in the recovery and the reaction to what happened at Michigan State on Monday. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much, Tyler.